So, you just started using LinkedIn Premium. Now what? Well, on your premium company page, you noticed around 7.5 times more page engagement and 5 times more page views. Well done. And now, new clients are messaging you. All because you're using LinkedIn Premium, which helps you get the business growth you want. Think big, small business. Think big. Start your free trial at linkedin.com/premium small business. That's linkedin.com/premium small business.
Your weekend is not complete without the First Lady of New York Radio. It's the Joan Hamburg Show. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome to the Joan Hamburg Show. Sunday, 2 o'clock. We do it every Sunday at 2. And you can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter. We're everywhere. And I love sharing all our guests with you. We have a really good show every week, but I'm sort of partial. My old friend, Ken Auletta, who writes for The New Yorker, is a wonderful writer. Just has a new book out called Hollywood Ending, and it's about Harvey Weinstein and the culture of silence. It's about this guy who's now in jail as a convicted rapist, and for decades, this power guy with power movies went undetected. No one turned him in, including his victims, until the Me Too movement. And then they all turned him in, and as a result, he's in jail. But it's a fascinating and sort of revolting look at this guy. Like, what happened that he turned into such an abuser, a person who was basically evil? And it's also a story about Hollywood, and it's a story about power. So even though you may say to yourself, do I really want to read about this disgusting human being? It was a fascinating look behind the scenes, and it still goes on. Power, and what happens to certain people when they get it, and how they abuse it, and how the culture of fear and silence still reigns supreme. It's a big deal, and I was fascinated by it. And by the way, I'm very happy to be back with you. I was off for a couple of weeks, and it's interesting because fortunately, I'm very rarely sick. I'd never even had a doctor, which is ironic. But I got this weird thing that involves your esophagus. Now, you tell me, did you even know you had an esophagus? Who dealt with stuff like that? Never thought about it. Never felt a symptom. Never felt sick. And yet I ended up with this thing which could have been really serious. And if you want to know about trauma, my voice was affected. And for a couple of weeks, I had a hard time with my voice. And I thought, I can't believe this. Could anyone have found this, or whatever it is? I still don't know what it's called, or picked it up. But luckily, I had a doctor friend who was brilliant and found it and got to someone and got there in time, and it was taken care of. But it was really scary. And I don't know what lessons ought to be learned. I mean, I don't know if a doctor could have picked it up because it was asymptomatic until it wasn't. It was like my esophagus just went crazy. And I'm not kidding when I said, who even knew about your esophagus? Who thinks about that stuff? So now, as my kids always say, so what are you going to take away? You're going to now go for regular checkups? I said, well, I can't answer that because even if I went and there were no symptoms, what would they be looking for if I had nothing to complain about? I don't know. But it was an ordeal because I just didn't know what it was until we had this great team that did. And I was at Columbia Presbyterian, which is a superb hospital. So anyway, whatever it is not. And I'm happy to be back with you and talking to all the people I like to share, whether it's Daniel Silva. He's if you're going to read thrillers, you've got to read him. He's one of my favorites. And now, of course, Ken Auletta, who is a wonderful writer. You read him. He does a column, Annals of Communication, in the New Yorker all the time. And he's a look behind the scenes at the abuse and use of power to manipulate, and how there is a culture of silence and shame for even the most intelligent human beings. They're afraid, and they're afraid of jobs. And that was really interesting, and how Hollywood is still filled with this, and not only Hollywood. I came of age in the advertising business, and it was not like Harvey, but it wasn't good, when it came to women and how women were treated. It's all interesting. Anyway, the book is, even though I didn't want to hear more about Harvey, it was a really fascinating read. He's an excellent writer and does good research. So it's called Hollywood Ending. But we've got such a good show for you today, and I'm so happy you can share it. And don't forget, we do this every Sunday at 2 o'clock. And you can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter, you name it, we're there. So come along, be part of the gang. I'm Joan Hamburg, and we've got a lot of shows straight ahead.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Joan Eats.
One of the trends we're seeing in New York is restaurants packaging, bottling, shipping some of their favorite products. We saw this with Rayo's and the Rayo's marinara sauce, which is hugely popular and delicious. So one of New York's leading Italian restaurants, Carbone, is now selling their pasta sauce online and in supermarkets. The sauce is a hit, and in fact, they have many versions of the marinara sauce. The spicy one won the People's Choice Award, and they claim it's bursting with fresh tomato flavor. It's got heat. It's delicious. In fact, Rayo's, they're similar. People are always comparing them. It's about, depending on the market, $9 for a 24-ounce jar in the market. I've often seen Carbones on sale. Last week, believe it or not, Stop & Shop had it for $4.99. It comes in 6 varieties. The easiest one to find was the marinara or the tomato basil, but there are a lot of them, and they have really good products. I looked at the marinara label. It's whole Italian tomatoes, tomato puree, sea salt, onions, good stuff. They're made in small batches, no sugar, no GMOs. Go online to Carbone, Carbone, finefoods.com. Shipping is free for any 4-pack, and a 4-pack costs $39.96. I found it at my neighborhood D'Agostino. This restaurant was created by Mario Carbone and a couple of top restaurant people in Greenwich Village. In fact, the restaurant got a Michelin star back in 2013. So you're getting something really delicious. I know a lot of you say, I make my own. Well, I make my own too, but when you have sauce this good, you don't have to. So check it out, affordable in most of the markets. I know you're going to enjoy it.
The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg, entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
A new book that people are talking about by a wonderful writer. Ken Auletta. He's been doing his communications column, profiles for The New Yorker for many years. This is Ken's 13th book, Hollywood Ending, Harvey Weinstein and the Culture of Science. And as I said to Ken right before we started, you know, he's one of the most disgusting, despicable characters you have ever heard about, read about, know about. But I couldn't stop reading the book and saying to myself, plenty of people have horrible childhoods, crazy parents, and they survive it. What happened here where this man became, as he was called, a monster? He has a brother who wasn't such a Boy Scout either, but got over it and sort of has been redeemed. Anyway, Ken, you have been dealing with Harvey for many years, for better or for worse.
True. And fortunately, I don't have to deal with him anymore, Joe.
No, this book put it to bed. Was it with a big sigh of relief?
Well, actually, I was fascinated. I had profiled him in the New Yorker in 2002 and portrayed him as an abusive, volatile personality, but also a talented movie executive. But I came within inches of nailing him on being a sexual predator, but I couldn't get the woman to talk to me. But when he was exposed by the brilliant reporting of two New York Times reporters,
right,
in October of 2017, I said, but there's still mysteries to this guy. How did he become a monster? What happened in the relationship between he and his brother, his closest associate, where his brother in the end fired him? How do you use and abuse power? Who were the people who allowed him to keep this secret for more than 4 decades? Those were some of the mysteries I was interested in exploring in a full biography of Harvey Weinstein.
Well, and that's what the reader, me, kept asking. How could this have been hidden and covered up for decades? What happened here? Everyone knew. You know, ironically, Ken, one of my kids' best friends from high school, John Gordon, got a job when he was a kid as an intern for him. And we were like, oh, what a lucky break, you know, for this kid who wants to be in the movie business. So it was fascinating. And then, of course, I read some of John's stuff in your book. But it was also a journey for those of us who don't know, a journey about power and how it's exploited, and particularly in the film industry. Did anything surprise you going along this complicated research?
Well, a lot of things surprised me. I did learn in terms of the reason it was kept a secret. Harvey believed that the key to power was fear. People had to fear you. And he invested a lot of effort in making sure people feared him. And so people kept quiet because of that. Among the things that did surprise me, learning about his mother. His mother, Miriam, was a very person, and she dominated the household when Harvey was a child. But she yelled all the time. She yelled so much, in fact, that his friends who played poker every weekend at a different home would never agree to play poker at the Weinstein home. Why? Because Miriam yelled too much. Harvey, you're too fat. Harvey, stop doing this. Harvey, that. And very dominant person. So her role and how she normalized yelling, which became a staple in the Weinstein, in both the Miramax and then the Weinstein Company after it. Harvey and Bob yelled all the time. And that was a reflection of what they grew up to think of as normal. I was also amazed and surprised by the fact that Harvey had no incidents that I could find of sexual abuse in junior high school or high school, or even the first 3 years of college at the University of Buffalo. He only began to abuse women when he had power. And he had power first as a rock promoter in Buffalo before he entered the movie business. And then it escalated when he had more power in the movie business. But he did not abuse women until he had power. And power became a kind of an aphrodisiac for him.
Right. And as you point out, too, it wasn't just about the sex. It was about the power and what he held over these people. And when you're reading the book, I'm saying to myself, well, what happened to all these people, these actors, these actresses? I mean, he abused men, too, in a different way. But what happened to them? Was it all about getting work and afraid, like Gwyneth Paltrow says he was making the movies then? So
well, clearly, if you're an ambitious actor or actress, you wanted to be in a Harvey movie. Miramax was doing these great movies: My Left Foot, Crying Game, Sex Lives and Videotape, Shakespeare in Love. And if you had aspirations to maybe one day win an Academy Award, the place you wanted to be was not at a big studio, which is making a Batman and all these sequel movies, but a Miramax movie where you had a better shot at being an Academy Award winner. So they gravitated and they wanted to seek his favor. But what happened was that many these actresses who wanted to seek his favor, he wanted something in return: sex.
And the amazing story, which could be another book alone, is the story of Harvey and his brother, who also played a major role in all of this. But you question, how did the brother escape this? Why did the brother not turn out like Harvey? They had the same background.
I think the brother is a better human being than Harvey was. He's very talented, by the way. In many ways, many years he made more money. His Dimension movies under the Miramax label made more money than Miramax movies, Harvey's movies did. But Bob became an alcoholic, and then he sought treatment for joined Alcoholics Anonymous, sought treatment for it, and became a very reflective person, looking inside himself, trying to figure out how to make himself a better person, how to avoid the pitfalls that he saw his brother falling into. And Bob, just became a better person, and obviously never partook in the kind of sexual assaults that Harvey did. Very close to his brother, but they came apart, and partly because his brother had become a narcissist, partly because Bob thought his brother was out of control with his spending and endangering the company. And in the end, at one point in 2015, Harvey sucker punched Bob, breaking his nose. They made peace, but it was a very cold peace. Finally, when Harvey was exposed in October 2017, what Bob did, Bob's vote was critical to fire Harvey from the Weinstein Company.
Right, and I wonder about the guilt that he must have felt, or even that he still feels, when he sees the fate of this brother.
I don't think Bob feels guilt. Bob feels that justice was done, that his brother was a bad person, and he was found guilty for the right reasons. Bob stopped speaking to Harvey in early 2018. They haven't spoken since. And so he basically is divorced from his brother and feels that his brother was not a good human being and deserves the punishment he's receiving.
Did you end up feeling sorry at all for Harvey at this stage in his life? Sort of, does anyone come to visit this guy?
Well, he had his 3 daughters from his first marriage don't speak to him. His brother doesn't speak to him. His first wife doesn't speak to him. His 2 little kids from his second wife are in New York. He's waiting a trial in Los Angeles, so they don't. His second wife has a chilly distance from him. His former friends, most of them have peeled away. So Harvey is alone in a wheelchair in a prison in L.A. awaiting trial. Do I feel sorry for him? I don't feel sorry for him. I think he's gotten a just sentence that he deserved. Do I think about him as a human being, what it must feel like to be in prison after flying in private planes and making movies and standing on the Academy Award stage so many years? Of course. How could you not think about it? So you think about but I think more about the tragedy of it than the sadness of it. I don't feel empathy for him, though I do wonder, my God, what goes through his mind as he sits eating baked beans in prison.
Right. And how can he possibly, with all the problems that he has medically too, get through or even want to get through? What a nightmare all of this is.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't be a human being if you didn't think about that to him. I mean, I'm not filled with rage, so much rage that I can't look past it and say, oh my God, what a life, what a fall.
Right, what a fall. And did any of the victims who never came forth until everyone came forth, how do they feel that they sat on this, that they just let it was a horrible experience?
But they were afraid. I mean, one of the big obstacles for the prosecution in the Harvey case, criminal trial in New York, was how do you explain why women who Harvey allegedly raped still kept in touch with him afterwards? Right. And the defense would argue because these women were ambitious, they wanted something. But one of the prosecution witnesses that the prosecution called to the stand was Dr. Barbara Ziv of Temple University. And she's an expert on rape. And one of the things she said, which really stayed with me and I think stayed with the jury, she said that 40% of the women in America who are raped continue to keep in touch with the person who raped them. And they do for reasons. Sometimes because they're afraid. Sometimes because they're in denial that it ever happened to them. Sometimes because they blame themselves for it happening. For various reasons, they keep in touch with that person. And the jury bought that argument. So many of these women who were his victims, as I report in the book, it's taken a huge toll on their life. Some of them became alcoholics or turned to drugs. Many of them have had to struggle after the horrors that they went through with Harvey. So it's your heart bleeds.
Right, and at the soul of this era, the casting couch was part of our vocabulary. But now we're at a different time. And is power still exploited, do you think, in the film industry and the entertainment world?
Oh, of course it is. I mean, you can't be in one of the things that's peculiar about Hollywood and the entertainment world is that beautiful young women work side by side or in close proximity to heads of studios, producers, directors, people in power. And if you're in power, you tend to have a large ego. And when one of these attractive young women say to you, oh, Mr. Weinstein, I love your movies. That was a great speech you made today. It's not uncommon for people like Harvey Weinstein or people in power to compliment with a come on. And so the casting couch, ambitious young women wanting a role in Hollywood, people with power thinking they can make a trade. I want something from you, you want something from me. But there's a difference between the casting couch, which was Harvey's defense of, and rape. Harvey was raping women. That's a criminal. That's a crime, and that's way beyond the couch that has existed for many decades in Hollywood.
So when all is said and done, did you answer that question of what contributed to his criminal behavior? You know, I kept thinking about his screaming, yelling parents, but there are people who grow up like that and don't become monsters.
Bob didn't become a sexual predator.
Right.
I mean, I came to the conclusion that there is no one rosebud that simply explains why Harvey became the monster. There are various things. I mean, obviously, the yelling and the thirst for dominance is part of it. Power, how it went to his head, is part of it. But I basically concluded, and I write this in the book, that Harvey's a sociopath. And he basically is an out-of-control person who thought it was normal to abuse people, including women.
Do you think if you talked to him today, you would get anything different out of him? No,
we had email exchanges from prison, which are in the book. But one of the questions I asked him, which I was dying to ask him, relevant to your question you're asking me now, and a question he did not answer, but I wrote in an email, which his PR person passed on to him. I said, Harvey, after you rape, let's say, Jessica Mann, who was one of the women who testified against him in the trial, after you raped Jessica Mann and you put your head on the pillow at night, how did you explain to yourself what you had just done? Harvey didn't answer that question. But I think if he had, since he doesn't think he's a villain, he thinks he's a victim, he would say, hey, it was casting couch. She wanted something from me, a job in Hollywood. I wanted something from her. It was consensual. It was a fair trade we made. And I suspect that's what his honest answer would be if he answered that question.
Yeah, well, which is fascinating. And I love when you quote him, and I'm misquoting now because I don't have the book in front of me, but when he was talking about all these women were talking and telling all these terrible stories, and he said, we had so much fun, we had such a good time. And he believed it.
Yeah, and they looked at this was just before he was sentenced. He asked to speak to the courtroom and the jury and the judge, and he looked at the women who 6 of them were seated in the front row, and he said, "We had such good times. I mean, I feel for you." And a minute after he said that, he switched and again portrayed himself as a victim of a kind of a new McCarthyism that was taking place, and treating men as if they were all sex fiends, and canceling them out, and how terrible it was. So again, he portrayed himself, as he did throughout the trial, as a victim, responsibility for what he had done.
Right, as a victim. And like anyone who's reading the book, I'm trying to find some link that would cause this to happen in people. And I couldn't really find it. He was a bad guy with bad DNA somewhere along the way.
I think that's right. I mean, I resisted the urge to succumb to what I call psychobabble, which is acting like a miniature psychiatrist and pretending to know what caused Harvey to become the monster he did become.
Right, and have no sense of doing wrong.
But the definition of a sociopath, the doctor's definition, and in the book I've heard doctors, professional doctors, about this, there are 3 qualifications to become listed as a sociopath. One is you're a narcissist. Harvey certainly was a narcissist. 2 is that you have no empathy. Witness how we treated the women in the trial and otherwise. Harvey had no empathy. And the 3rd is lack of guilt. They say Harvey had no guilt. He thinks he's a victim. Now, you could have all 3 of those qualities and not be a sociopath, obviously. But I believe Harvey, based on the number of times, over 100 women have come forward since he was exposed in October 2017. Over 100 women have come forward to claim that Harvey sexually abused them. That's a sociopath.
That's a sociopath. And you wonder if the power players who are still engaging in this behavior read this book and go, uh-oh, I got to get off this train. Or
There's
you
no
think
question.
It just goes on.
Well, I think it's probably abated some. I mean, men who have power who might be prone to abuse women because they think with their penis, not with their head. They don't want to happen to them what happened to Harvey and to Matt Lauer and Les Moonves.
All those
and
guys, right.
Goes on. But the question I have in my mind, is this a short-term improvement or is it a long-term improvement? And we don't know the answer to that yet.
No, but the book should definitely add a punch to what people are thinking. Thank you, Ken. It was a fascinating read. Hollywood Ending, Harvey Weinstein and the Culture of Science by Ken Auletta. Thank you guys for joining. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Summer of cinema is here, and Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Beverly Hills Cop, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, Good Burger, Stealth, Four Brothers, and Star Trek. Bring the action with you and stream for free on all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never. Stream now at Pluto.tv. The First Lady of New York Radio, Joan Hamburg. Entertaining and informative. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
All right, everyone. I was a little worried that my favorite spy and art restorer, Gabriel Allon, wouldn't be back fast enough for me. But thank goodness he apparently was no longer going to be dealing with Israeli intelligence. He was going to be like a real person, walking his kids to school in Venice. But I knew that with author Daniel Silva, he couldn't just bop around Venice. It wasn't going to work. So in this new book, Portrait of an Unknown Woman, Gabriel does something different. I mean, this book takes us into another world. We're not dealing necessarily with Chinese spies, the Middle East that much. We're dealing with another very dark world, the world of art. And I know you love music. Everyone who reads you knows that. But I didn't know that you were obsessed with art, too. Is that new or what?
No. I mean, art has played a big role in the Gabriel Allon series from the beginning. I mean, he truly is one of the world's finest art restorers. And a number of the books have started in the art world and then branched into
the rest,
off into counterterrorism or Gabriel's duels with Russian intelligence, or even the Iran nuclear program. That's a book called The Rembrandt Affair. The story had its origins in the art world. But this book is something that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time. It begins in the art world, and for the most part, it stays in the art world. And when we say that art world, we're talking about the dirty end of the art
right.
world. As you said in your introduction, Gabriel has retired from the Israeli Secret Intelligence Service. He was the Director General of the office, as I call it. As forecast a couple of books ago, he and his family settle in Venice. Gabriel resumes his career as an art restorer. He works for his wife, actually, who is the director or the general manager of the largest, most important restoration company in Venice. And in short order, Gabriel is drawn into a search for quite probably the greatest art forger who ever lived. And the twist of the story is that in order to find the greatest art forger who ever lived, Gabriel has to become the greatest art forger who ever lived. And it is a fast-paced, entertaining, at times uproariously funny journey through the dirty side of the art world. It's sort of a cross between the Thomas Crown Affair and the Showtime program Billions. And it deals with a question that a lot of people in the art world don't like to talk about. And that is exactly how many of those beautiful paintings that you see hanging in art galleries or hanging on the walls of museums, how many of those paintings are actually fakes and forgeries or paintings that have been misattributed over the centuries?
And I'm interested in hearing the reaction of the art community when the word about this book started circulating.
Well, I got the wonderful reaction from my expert readers who I turn to for help. I did get a suggestion that maybe I should keep a low profile if I go to the European Fine Arts Fair next year.
Exactly.
Because the book, I didn't name a figure in the book, but it does suggest that there are a lot of that forgery is a major problem in the art world, and that there are gobs and gobs of forgeries coursing through the bloodstream of the commercial art world, and that there are a lot of dirty art dealers out there who are more than willing to sell these things. And that is, unfortunately, that is indeed the case.
Right, and the art market in this town has been booming. And it's, you often hear people say, forget the market, I'm going into the art market. And
yes,
so,
you do.
Right?
And that is it's something that I ground that I cover in this novel. I mean, look, the art market exploded in the 1980s, as you remember. And back then, there were very, super wealthy people who were buying up art and locking it away in bank vaults and things like that. But that has really accelerated to the point where now art, unfortunately, and I mean that, unfortunately, has become just another asset class, just another investment vehicle for a lot of people. And people are investing in art purely for speculative reasons. And look, in the Geneva Freeport, which I've used in a couple of books, there are an estimated 1 million paintings locked away in vaults inside the Geneva Freeport. 1 million paintings, perhaps 10,000 Picassos, just sitting in darkened rooms in crates. And if they're held by very rich people, they trade hands secretly. They will never. Many of them will never ever be seen again. Many of them will never even hang on the walls of a beautiful home. They're just locked away like gold bars. I'm not naive. Money has made the art world go round from the beginning. And if it wasn't for the financial support of the Medicis, for example, there wouldn't have been a Renaissance. If it wasn't for the financial support of the church, masterpiece after masterpiece would not have been painted. But there really is, I think, something wrong with just investing in art for purely speculative and financial reasons. It just rubs me the wrong way.
I'm talking to Daniel Silva, the award-winning New York Times bestselling author. I think this is the 25th novel. I could be wrong.
It is the 25th novel. It is a milestone year for me.
When you think back of how you started, it's really fascinating the twists and turns your career has taken, sort of like Gabriel.
I think that most people who have, in effect, two careers consider themselves lucky. And I definitely had two careers. The first half of my career, I was a journalist. And then in my mid-30s, I was able to focus all my time writing novels, which was what I always wanted to do. So yeah, I'm a bit like Gabriel in that I definitely have two sides to my character. Fortunately, I am married to a journalist, so I didn't leave the news business completely behind. Most of my friends in Washington are journalists, but I did move on to a second career in my mid-30s and never looked back. And I'm amazed that I was able to to make a go of it, and that I've published 25 books. I never thought I would write that many books.
Right, and book number one, your first book, became a bestseller. What most of us would talk about is how did you know this stuff? I mean, I know you do extensive research, but as the world was falling apart, you were like a jump ahead. And how? You knew what was going on in Russia, in China. You knew the biggest crooks and spies before they even knew they were.
I guess, I'm writing about an intelligence officer, and I sort of approached my work as though I were an intelligence officer. The worst thing that you can do in the spy business is to be taken by surprise. You always have to look over the horizon. What's coming? What's the world going to be like 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? How do we plan? And that's how I went about my books. I have to start a book in effect, a year before it's published. So it has to be timely. It has to be of the moment. The worst thing a thriller can be is out of date, and so it forced me to think ahead and to try to imagine, well, what is the world going to be like when I publish this novel? And our times are move at the speed of light. The news cycle changes. Events are just coming at us. Try to imagine what happened in the 22 years that Gabriel Allon has been a character. 9/11, the financial crisis, the rise of Putin, the rise of ISIS, the rise of the far right in Europe, and I would argue here in America. Things of a global pandemic. Monumental events, and for better or worse, the Gabriel Allon book has sort of served as I have chronicled those events for the last 20 years through my fiction.
Right, but the thing is, you're describing these events, and most of us had no clue and were shocked as event after event happened, but you knew, or you seemed to know, and you took us there with him.
I had a sense that things were going in this direction. I had a sense, and I planned accordingly and wrote accordingly. I was the first person to write Vladimir Putin and Putinism as not an ally of the West or potential ally of the West, but it was clear to me what was really going on with Vladimir Putin and what he intended, and that should be clear to everyone now that he has invaded Ukraine and killed innocent civilians and bombed shopping centers and apartment buildings. It's just he's engaged in an act that make him among the most barbarous, awful people in history.
So now, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to Gabriel now that he always was a painter and a restorer, but so serious about it?
Yeah.
Where are we going to follow him now?
Well, I had always planned with Gabriel, this is the 22nd book, that this is where the story would end. Okay, after he finished his term as Director General of Israeli intelligence, I wanted to put him back in an artistic context. Will he be drawn into operations and international intrigue, for lack of a better term, geopolitics in the future? Almost certainly. But this book really is a series reset in a way. And if you look at it carefully, retouched Gabriel a little bit. It's a bit of a departure, but it's also a series reboot, and this is where how the Allon series will progress.
Yeah, well, that's what we're hoping. Please don't retire him.
No. Not yet.
We're not ready for him to leave us yet.
Neither am I. I am looking forward to the series going forward. I have a number of books that I'd like to get to. This is something that I've been wanting to write for about 5 years. I couldn't write it because of the kind of work that Gabriel was doing at the time. I loved writing this book. I love the reaction that I've gotten thus far to it. I laughed throughout the writing process. It was so much fun to write, and I hope that comes through and people read it.
It does. I love this book, Daniel Silva, Portrait of an Unknown Woman. And don't worry, everything is going to be all right. But there's going to be a lot more excitement. And I'm still waiting for the television series. I don't know.
But to quote one of my favorite lines from the series Seinfeld, "Wheels are in motion, things are happening," and hopefully by the time we talk next year, there'll be some more news on that front.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Danielle. All the best to you. You provided us with a great read, a whole new twist, and a new look at one of our favorite characters. So
thank you so much. I appreciate that.
We'll talk soon. I'm Joan Hamburg, and you're listening to WABC with the one and only Daniel Silva. Stay tuned for more.
The First Lady of New York Radio.
This is Ask Joan.
One of the questions that I often get is, I want to meet someone. I'm alone, I'm divorced, I'm single, whatever. And whenever I say, do you know about date night at the Met? People are like, what? Yeah, Friday and Saturdays from 5 to 9, the fabulous Metropolitan Museum at 5th Avenue, 1005th in New York City, has it. They host it. And during the summer, until September 3rd, it will include the Sunset Series. That's an electronic musical event on the rooftop. It's a perfect activity when you want to be with people, you want live music, drinks, maybe meet someone, and it's good music, drink specials, and it's a lot of fun, I promise you. So they're all free with museum admission, which is always pay what you want for New York State residents, and New Jersey, Connecticut, if you're a student with a valid ID, and pay what you wish tickets can only be reserved in person and can't be purchased online. Go to metmuseum.org. $30 tickets for adults, $22 for seniors, $17 for students. And it's something I know you're going to enjoy. Check it out and then let us know. Who knows? You might meet someone. All right, everyone, I'm looking at the clock, and it's time to say goodbye and make room for Curtis Lewa. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Joan Hamburg, and of course, this is your favorite radio station, WABC.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.